regarding an alleged inappropriate relationship between Gypsy Rose Blanchard and a corrections officer at Chillicothe Women's Prison, where Gypsy Rose was housed.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard is back in the spotlight, and this time, it's not just about her post-prison transformation. It's about how she seems to be moving through parole with little to no consequences. While most former inmates carefully follow their restrictions, Gypsy has been spotted attending concerts, visiting distilleries, and doing things that should normally raise major red flags. But what if there's a reason she's been able to do this? What if she has friends in high places?
Former corrections officer appears to have an unusually personal connection with Gypsy Rose. He's face friends with her, frequently liking and commenting on her photos, and they may even be in contact through direct messaging.
People looking the other way, people who should be enforcing the rules but instead seem to be bending them. That's exactly what internet sleuths have been investigating, and what they've uncovered has raised eyebrows all over social media. It all started when a content creator named Night Converse did some digging and stumbled across a name that seemed oddly connected to Gypsy, David Gilmer, according to his Facebook profile.
A former corrections officer appears to have an unusually personal connection with Gypsy Rose. He's face friends with her, frequently liking and commenting on her photos.
David Gilmer is from Chillicothe, Missouri, and he wasn't just some random person. He was a correctional officer at the Chillicothe Correctional Center while Gypsy was incarcerated there. And not just any officer. In December 2021, he was named Employee of the Month, receiving the award directly from the warden.
In contact through direct messaging. The fact that the officer is even friends with her on Face very much blurs professional boundaries, in my opinion.
At first glance, it might not seem like a big deal, but when people started looking deeper, they found details that raised serious questions. David Gilmer appears to have a surprisingly personal connection with Gypsy. He is friends with her on Facebook, frequently likes and comments on her posts, and some believe they may have even been in contact through direct messaging. While this in itself could be written off as harmless,
connection to a CO is very unsettling. Adding to the complexity, the officer...
What really caught people's attention was who was engaging with David's own posts. When he shared his Employee of the Month award, among the reactions was a heart from Ken, Gypsy's ex, and a like from Gypsy herself. A former correctional officer receiving engagement from a former inmate. That's not something you see every day. But the connections didn't stop there. Further digging revealed that David had interacted with multiple people from Gypsy's circle online.
In the lawsuit points to a troubling pattern of behavior and misconduct, combined with rumors of Gypsy Rose receiving special treatment like McDonald's and taking walks, using the...
raising even more speculation about just how close they really were during her time in prison. Some users even pointed out that he had commented on posts related to Gypsy after her release, fueling further speculation about the nature of their relationship. While some might argue that Gypsy was simply being polite, the question remains, why would an ex-inmate be keeping up with a former CO? And why would a CO be so invested in an inmate's life after they were released? The deeper people looked, the harder it became to dismiss this as just an innocent acquaintance.
There are valid questions about integrity and fairness raised within the prison system. While it's unclear whether these rumors are true, the officer's relationship with Gypsy Rose raises red flags.
Things became even more suspicious when records showed that David Gilmer was frequently assigned to Gypsy's unit, meaning he had regular, direct contact with her. This revelation led to even more questions. Was this a friendship that developed over time, or was there something more happening behind the scenes? Did their interactions ever cross ethical lines? And could this connection have played a role in how Gypsy navigated her time in prison and the early days of her parole? Former inmates from the same facility have come forward, stating that it is incredibly rare for a correctional officer and an inmate to maintain contact.
And called for closer scrutiny of his actions, especially when there was alleged prohibited contact between Gypsy Rose and Nicholas Godejohn during Gypsy Rose's incarceration.
Not just during incarceration, but especially after release. Most COs keep their relationships with inmates strictly professional and do not continue engaging with them once their sentence is complete. So why was David Gilmer different? Why did he continue maintaining a connection with Gypsy? And more importantly, could this relationship have influenced how she was treated within the system? These details add even more layers to the story. This wasn't just a typical CO-inmate dynamic. There was clear familiarity, an ongoing connection, and multiple online interactions that make it difficult to chalk this up to mere coincidence. If their relationship was more than just an innocent friendship,
friends with her on face very much blurs professional boundaries, in my opinion. What makes the situation even more troubling is that Gilmore was involved in a sexual harassment lawsuit filed last year by a former inmate at a
it raises serious questions about the extent of Gypsy's influence and how she may have leveraged it both during and after her time behind bars. But the plot thickens even further. David Gilmer isn't just any former CHO with a questionable connection to Gypsy. His name has reportedly come up in legal documents before. While the specifics of these documents remain unclear, the fact that his name has surfaced in legal matters only adds to the mystery surrounding his relationship with Gypsy and whether his influence has played a role in her seemingly relaxed parole conditions.
Where Gilmore had worked. The lawsuit accused several former corrections officers, including Gilmore. This raises serious questions about the officers' behavior and the potential abuse of power within the prison system.
The situation has sparked intense debate online. Some people believe Gypsy is simply enjoying her freedom after years behind bars and that there's nothing unusual about her parole. Others are convinced that her connections, particularly with Gilmer, have allowed her to bend the rules in ways that other parolees simply can't. Whether this is just an innocent friendship or something more, one thing is clear: Gypsy Rose Blanchard always manages to keep people talking. The lawsuit that's shaking things up. Former inmate Antonio Lamont Webb recently sued multiple employees of the prison, including a correctional officer named David Gilgo.
So many other officers were indicted in this case, or, charges were filed against him along with others,
accusing them of sexual harassment, cruel and unusual punishment, failure to protect, and retaliation. Webb claimed that Gilgo repeatedly made inappropriate comments, grabbed him in unwanted ways, and created an unsafe environment inside the prison. According to Webb, his complaints were brushed under the rug, and he even faced retaliation for speaking out. Other inmates allegedly witnessed these disturbing encounters, yet prison officials dismissed his concerns when he tried to file formal reports. Now, here's where it gets interesting.
in this case. It makes you wonder. And then having Gypsy and Ken, liking and hearting his little, employee of the month.
Even though the lawsuit was eventually dismissed due to a lack of solid evidence, it raises serious questions about Gilgo's behavior. Does the dismissal mean he's innocent? Not necessarily. It just means that whatever happened, it wasn't enough to get him convicted. But the fact that his name has been tied to such serious allegations, that's enough to make people wonder what else might have been going on behind those prison walls.
It makes us have so many questions anyway. It makes you have so many questions, but it makes us wonder, okay, because of all this shenanigans that happened, all these shenanigans that went on with all of this, did he move?
And this is where Gypsy comes in. We all know she has a pattern of forming close relationships with people who can offer her protection, loyalty, or an advantage. She knows how to pull at heartstrings and position herself as someone in need of saving. Just look at her past. With Nicholas Godejohn, she convinced him she was trapped in a nightmare and that the only way out was for him to commit an unthinkable act. With Ken Urker, she built an emotional connection that lasted even after she moved on. And with Ryan Anderson, despite all the public humiliation and scandals, he's still standing by her.
The men's correctional facility to the women's correctional facility, which is where Gypsy would have been held. Why else would she know this correctional officer in Chillicothe, Missouri?
So, is it really that crazy to think she may have used those same tactics on a correctional officer? Someone who had power over her daily life in prison. Someone who could make things easier for her or even look the other way. If she could convince multiple men on the outside to fight her battles, defend her, and stay loyal no matter what, why wouldn't she be able to do the same with someone working inside the system?
Posted to her own Instagram is a slap in the face to both the Missouri and Louisiana parole board. It's as if she is flaunting her entitlement and the shit that she can get away with while literally taking selfies in a...
And if she managed to do that while behind bars, what's stopping her from keeping up the act now that she's free? Speaking of freedom, Gypsy doesn't seem too worried about her parole restrictions. She's been spotted at a private Post Malone concert in San Francisco, far from Louisiana, where she's supposed to be staying under supervision. She's also posted pictures from a distillery, despite being explicitly banned from consuming alcohol. Her parole conditions are crystal clear: no alcohol, no drugs, and no leaving the state without permission. Yet, here she is, doing all three, and there doesn't seem to be any consequences.
I mean, in essence, that's what this is. She went to a Post Malone concert that was sponsored by Bud Light and was seen, in the audience, filming herself. And we all know, everybody around her, we saw it in the videos,
And it's not just a one-time slip-up. Gypsy has been out and about, flaunting her freedom like she's got nothing to worry about. From attending exclusive events to being seen in environments where a parolee would typically face major scrutiny, she's living it up with zero pushback. Other parolees get thrown back behind bars for missing curfew, associating with the wrong people, or breaking even the smallest rule. So why does it seem like Gypsy gets a free pass? On top of that, she's been seen hanging out with people that would normally be considered off limits for someone on parole. She's moving freely, engaging in activities that should require approval, yet there's no record of any warnings or violations against her. Is she just lucky, or is someone making sure she doesn't face any real consequences?
Know there was drugs passing around, like joints, whatever. So it just seems as though she feels as though she is above any parolee restrictions and is just flaunting it in front of everybody's face. And never mind the fact.
Let's talk about Antonio Lamont Webb's lawsuit against the Western Missouri Correctional Center, where he accused multiple employees, including a correctional officer named David Gilgo, of sexual harassment, cruel and unusual punishment, and retaliation. Webb alleged that Gilgo repeatedly made inappropriate comments, put his hands on him in unsettling ways, and abused his power to make inmates feel unsafe. Despite his repeated attempts to file complaints, his concerns were allegedly ignored, and he even faced backlash for speaking out. Although the lawsuit was dismissed due to insufficient evidence, it doesn't erase the allegations.
As a newborn at home, we'll get into that. I mean, this is only the second outing that she has volunteered being a part of in, regards to her baby.
If anything, it raises even more concerns. The fact that Webb went as far as filing legal action suggests there was something seriously wrong with how things were being handled behind those prison walls. And here's where it gets interesting. Gypsy was incarcerated in the same facility. If she had any sort of connection with Gilgo, it could explain why she seems to be getting special treatment even after her release. Anyone on parole knows that one wrong move, missing curfew, traveling without permission, or even associating with the wrong people could send them right back to prison. So why does it seem like Gypsy is immune? She's been spotted far from Louisiana, attending a private Post Malone concert in San Francisco.
Months old. This is only what she has volunteered us thus far in regards to her going out and living her best life. I'm sure, she's probably doing a lot more behind the scenes that we don't know about. But we'll get into that. But
she shared pictures from a distillery despite being banned from consuming alcohol. She's been seen out and about, attending high-profile events, and engaging in activities that would normally raise red flags for any Parole. Yet, there's been no sign of consequences. Could it be that she still has someone pulling strings for her? If a correctional officer with deep ties to the system is looking out for her, then suddenly, everything starts to make a lot more sense. If the very people who are supposed to be enforcing the rules are instead protecting her from consequences, it calls the entire parole process into question. This isn't just about a few questionable outings. It's a repeated pattern of behavior that suggests Gypsy has figured out how to work the system in her favor. Whether it's through personal connections, legal loopholes, or pure manipulation, she seems to be moving through life with an ease that most parolees could only dream of.
Regarding an alleged inappropriate relationship between Gypsy Rose Blanchard and a corrections officer at Chillicothe Women's Prison, where Gypsy Rose was housed. David Gilgore, a former corrections officer, appears to have an unusually personal connection with Gypsy Rose. He's face friends with her, frequently liking and commenting on her photos, and they may even be in contact through direct messaging.
And let's be real, correctional officers are expected to maintain professional boundaries for a reason. The moment those boundaries blur, it opens the door for favoritism, corruption, and serious security risks. If an inmate can cozy up to an officer and use that relationship to their advantage, what does that say about the integrity of the justice system? If one officer is willing to bend the rules for Gypsy, who's to say it hasn't happened before or won't happen again? But what happens if all of this comes to light? If it turns out that Gypsy has indeed been receiving special treatment because of her alleged connection to Gilgo, the fallout could be massive, not just for her, but for him too. Correctional officers who cross these lines risk losing their jobs.
A former corrections officer appears to have an unusually personal connection with Gypsy Rose. He's face friends with her, frequently liking and commenting on her photos, and they may even be in contact through direct messaging. The fact that the officer is even friends with her on Face very much blurs professional boundaries, in my opinion.
Facing legal repercussions, and even being criminally charged if their actions interfere with justice. For Gypsy, it could mean a full review of her parole status. If it's discovered that violations were overlooked due to favoritism, her case could be reopened, leading to potential restrictions or even a return to prison. For now, though, Gypsy still seems to have the upper hand. She's walking free, testing the limits, and proving that she knows exactly how to navigate the system. The real question is, how long can she keep getting away with it? Will her so-called untouchable status eventually crumble? Or will she continue slipping through the cracks of the justice system? And if the truth does come out, will she finally be held accountable? Or will the people in power continue to turn a blind eye? The justice system is supposed to ensure fairness and accountability, but when influence, manipulation, and personal connections come into play, those lines become dangerously blurred. What do you think? Is Gypsy playing the system, or does she genuinely deserve the freedom she's enjoying? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you want to stay updated on this unfolding situation, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because trust me, this is just the beginning.